Hi everyone, this is Kelly, and today I'm going to work with my water pencils. Stampin' Up! Has a couple of different sets. There's the watercolor pencils and watercolor pencils. They look like this. One has got 13 colors in it and the other one has got 10. They range from real red to white, some black, basic gray. This is this is a set of 13. This is a set of 10. With these two sets, you can pretty much make any color you really need. So I'm just going to show you some techniques on how I personally watercolor. So first what I do is I color in, which you can just see where I kind of scribble in the color. I'm not too careful with it. I'm not going in there very deeply. I just kind of scribble in there and it's fine for what I'm going to do. Now to make it look like watercoloring, there's some basic things that you have to do before you get to this part of scribbling in. This is the basic white paper, and this is watercolor paper. The ones that have an M I did with Memento ink, which is a ink that should bleed when you put water on it, and stays on is the waterproof ink. Now when I do this, I tend to be able to use the Memento ink because I don't flood the paper with a lot of water, but I'll try to make it smear so that you can see what could possibly happen. And there's a couple of ways that I get my colors to blend. The first way is by using this blender pen. I love this blender pen for just this reason. When I've colored in something, now I'm going to work on the watercolor paper here, and I'll show you what happens. I'm just going to work on the green leaf, but I can take this blender pen and it will blend it so it looks like it's painted. Okay? Isn't that beautiful? It's very, very simple. And now I don't have to have a different blender pen for this. If this were a scrap piece of paper, I would just scribble till it was clear, and then I would go into the red, and then I would use the blender pen there to make it fill in. And this is why it's not super important to fill it all the way, because this blender pen will take the color and move it along. Okay, so this is on watercolor paper and it works just fine. I'm just going to scribble it a little bit here to get the red out because I want to go into the yellow real briefly. And I'm just going to go into the yellow so it doesn't look orange. It kind of looks a little orange, but you can see how it lifts up the color. Okay, that is on watercolor paper. This is on the regular cardstock, the basic white. And again, this is with the Memento ink. And as you can see, I can come in here real quickly after I've scribbled or laid down some base color. And I can just blend it out, and it looks like I really know how to watercolor when I don't. But that's okay. That's anything that makes this crafting easier, we should do. And that's how I feel about it. Again, I have a scrap piece of paper. I'm just doing this on here so that you can hopefully see what I'm doing and see how I'm getting it cleared off. Here's the green again, and this is on the regular paper, the regular cardstock, the basic white. Okay, and this is how you clean off the blender pen. So this is one way to, after you've used your pencils and colored in, you can blend your colors with this to make it look like it's a water painted item. The next way to do that is going to be by using one of the Aqua brushes. Now, these come in a set of 3, okay? This is the fine tip. This is the fat tip that's used for backgrounds. And this is the medium tip, okay? When you use this, you want to make sure that this is wet, okay? And what I tend to do is I tend to just drop a dab of water on something so that I can see. I squeeze it till water comes out. Now I know that it's good and wet, and you can see that on my finger. Now this you have to be a little bit more careful with, because if you have too much water, it is going to flood it. It is going to give a different look. Now I'm doing this right next to where the blender pen was, so you can kind of see the difference in the color on that little bit there. Let me just do that off. And then I'll do this green in here. I'll do a little bit of red because I can, and then I'll just wipe it off. Now this is on watercolor paper. Okay, so again, I'm going to just show you with this brush, I can make it blend out. It has a little bit of water in it. It's not super soppy wet, which is why the colors aren't bleeding all over the place. Okay, now that's on watercolor. This is the same technique, but this time I'm doing it on the regular cardstock, or the basic white. And again, I just scribbled in here. So this is how I'm going to push this color around, is by getting some water in there, and it will flood it around. And you will get a nice even layer, and wherever it's thick, you're going to get color. Okay, and you can pull it a little bit, but it's not going to go super far because your paintbrush is not super wet. Okay, so that's another technique, and that's using the water brushes. And the last technique I want to show you, and it does take using a block, and I'm just going to spritz my block because my block has got ink on it, so that's not going to be good. So what I do is I take and put a few drops of water on here. I just want plain water. Hopefully you can see there's water on there. And now I'm going to show you what I call is dry brushing. This is what I do when I want an intense color on something, or I want to add highlights to something. Just remember, when you are doing watercolors, you do need to let things dry in between. Otherwise, it is just going to get all muddy and messed up. So for dry brushing, what I do is I hold the pencil and I take a brush. This is one of my favorite brushes. I use it for just about everything. And I just get it slightly wet, and I kind of dry it off on my finger. And then I take the brush to the tip of the pencil. I am now collecting color, and now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to paint with this color. And this color is going to be a lot deeper. The pigment is deeper. I'm just taking a little bit of water. I'm loading up my brush with paint and just holding the actual pencil and putting my color on. See how much darker I can get this? And it's not a lot of water. So this is, I'm working on one with Memento. And as they say, you should not do Memento ink in watercolors, but you can see, because I'm not using a lot of water, I am able to keep putting color on here and having it be just fine without it being flooded, okay? And this is what I do the most. This is how I apply watercolors to get that rich color. See, this is just plain water after I colored on it. This is me pulling the pigment off of here, and I would do that for like the berries. Look at those berries. Those look so much nicer than those other berries. Now, where I've gone and watercolored before, I can easily take this technique and come in here and put in some shading if I want. By using this technique, I don't need a lot of water to do this. And again, nothing is spilling over or smearing at this time because of how I'm doing that. Now this is the StazOn up here. These were both Mementos, and this was dry brushing on in this spot. I can show dry brushing on here too, I think. Let's do that. Let's put a little dry brushing. It's not perfectly dry, but it's not a real wet paintbrush. So I'm going to put some on the watercolor paper. And Look at that. Look at how dark that is. If you really want a real pretty poinsettia, you're going to want, depending upon who you are, I like the really dark red ones. Some people like the white. Some people like the peachy ones. I like the darker the better. And this is actually cherry cobbler, the color. Okay, so if it's not moving on you, I just wet my pencil or wet the tip of my brush again in plain water, and then I pull up more pigment. And as you can see, it's a little labor intensive, but it certainly is a more vibrant, dark color compared to the other two techniques. All of them work. If I were doing this one here, this is the one I use the blender brush on, I would come back and put more color in there. I would come in and put more color down and then reblend to get a darker color. It's the only way you would get it is by layering it at this point, because see, now I can get that dark color, but it takes me 2 times in doing that with the blender brush. Okay, so that's just something so you can get the shading and different hues that you want. Now this was on Memento, and I'm going to show you with this brush because it's a nice big fat brush and this is wet. So I'm going to show you that this is supposed to smear. Okay, because this is Memento, that black ink is supposed to smear, and as you can see, when you put too much water on it, now I'm on watercolor paper, you can see that it is pulling up that ink. It's also pulling up any other watercolor I had there. And you can see it's kind of gray and dingy. If I do that on the StazOn, outside of the fact that I used a dirty brush there, I can put water on this all day and it should not lift at all. It should just stay nice and beautiful. At this point, it's not going to change. My lines aren't going to change. These are going to change and smear and get muddy, and it will also lift off the paper. Okay, so that's why a lot of people swear only by using the StazOn because they're heavy-handed with the water. I'm not so heavy-handed with the water, so for me it's okay to do it the other way. Now here is the StazOn over here. Which one do I want to use? Choices. I'll use this one. So this is on, this is just me just quick throwing down color. Quick throwing down the color and everything. So see, that came across really well. Now this was a really poor stamping on my part. I didn't get the stamp completely down or immersed in the ink, therefore you have faded lines, but it's not because of the water, it is because I just did poor stamping. But that's the differences. So this is with a blender brush and then layering on some more and then blender brushing again. This is with a watercolor. Here's where we used what I call the dry brush technique to get the much darker hues. This is me smearing the water paper, and you can see this is not even stable with my touch. And as this dries, you'll see the color that leached out of it because it was too wet. This is StazOn. That's with the water pen again. And it's not going to go anywhere. So I hope you enjoyed how I do watercolors. The technique's pretty simple. I use most of them. I use the blender pen, Best Buy out there, because you get 3 of them. When you order a blender pen, you get 3 of them. I've only ever used one end. I still have they're double-sided, so they're both the same on both sides. So you could use this side for like darks and this for lights, but it really doesn't matter because once you do this and blend it around until it doesn't have any color, then it's basically a clean brush, even though it's stained. We did the water pens, and then we did what I call dry brushing, where you take and barely wet your brush and with just a little bit of water. Now I have a lot of water in there right now. I brush everything off on my fingers. It's a bad habit of painting. But this way I can come in here and I'm going to just go up here and do it up here so you can see again. Okay, and it's just a matter of getting enough pigment loaded into there with enough water, the right amount of water. It's just a fraction of the water that you need to pull that pigment off of here. And then you're able to flood it with good color. So I want to thank you for joining me this evening, and I hope you enjoyed my adventures with watercolors. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.